Today, we are remixing the loudest sound ever created by humans, the THX Sound. All right, so to start off, I've loaded a few things onto my MPC. The original sample, stolen shamelessly from a YouTube video. We're gonna get to that in a second. And then a bunch of drum samples. All from my $5 sample pack, link in the description. Get a bunch of drum and one-shot samples to use in your own music for $5. And so I've already got a fairly good idea of the vibe I'm going for, so let's just set a tap tempo. So I want part of that pitch sweep, and then I want that main chord, and I'm probably going to pitch it around a bit. So rather than chop this up like the lazy chop way, which is kind of the proper way you would chop up a sample, I'm just going to load this in on a few different pads, and then just manually grab the parts that I need. And I also want to make sure to send these all to the same mute group. So I want this to also grab that same chord. And while I'm at it, let's go ahead and set the attack to 1. So there's no little pop at the beginning of the sample. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. I kind of want to get another pitch slide. So we need to send that to the mute group. This is the slow way of doing this, by the way, but I have a very specific thing in mind I'm going for. So let's just start. So then switch to another chord, or another pitched chord. This is going to sound fairly strange, I think. Which, of course, is the goal. That sounds about right to me. And then I want this one to go back down, I think. See, that's dramatic. So we've basically just created a chord progression out of thin air, which is fun. And I realized I've made a tactical error here because I want to process all of those chord chops all at once, but they're on the same track as the drums, and they're all in different pads. So what I'm actually going to go ahead and do is duplicate this drum program. Let's say go to track 2. So now those chord chops exist on their own track, and I can build up my drums separately. So I think I want this hi-hat. I think this shaker just kind of going rapid fire in the background could be cool, but it's gonna need a bit of shaping. So let's make this some proper ADSR. So then I'm just gonna dot this in on every single step along the step sequencer. It's either this or play it in manually, and I'm not sure which is less efficient, but I think this will be easier. And then if I want anything about this to fluctuate, rather than doing it with the velocity that you just saw, I think I'll just do it with an LFO. I think that'll be easier. That's kind of cool. What if we just did that? We're going for kind of a trippy underwater sound anyway. This is definitely going to be Vaporwave inspired. Probably not proper Vaporwave, but, you know, in the same universe. Somewhere between Vaporwave and melodic dubstep, which is where I sit the best, let's be real here. Woo! Right there. I think this one takes the pitch effects the best. But what it needs is something to bring back that high end. So first of all, I'm just going to literally use an EQ to crank up the high end. Maybe cut some lows so it doesn't clog up too much headroom. Right there. And then I'm thinking a saturator of some sort. Tube drive. Woo! I want to be restrained with this, which I'm clearly not. I think that works. I think that makes it, I think it's a net positive. Let me quickly just drop a limiter on my master, because I already know I'm going to be pushing this pretty hard. And for that matter, why don't we do the whole trick where I put the MPC 3000 on here and then another limiter. And let me turn down this limiter a little bit so I'm not clipping into the MPC 3000 effect. And then we put a limiter on here just to make sure I'm catching any peaks. I'm playing fast and loose with my headroom here, if you couldn't tell. MPC 60 on this drum bus. And then maybe we can try a compressor, just see how that sounds. And then once again, a limiter. Ooh, okay, so this compressor's threshold is set like stupid low by default for some reason. That's kind of sick. And the volume balance is completely screwed. So we'll get to that in a second. So here's what I want to do for a third track. Let me bring up a brand new drum program. I'm just going to load on an arbitrary sample, probably just a kick. I'm going to make this stupid short. I'm going to send this to the Ducker input because I've noticed when I use two separate elements and send them both to the Ducker, it tends to not sound very good. But if I have a consistent element going into the Ducker, I can mute this track and that can trigger the sidechain, aka the ducking, and it'll work. So this is going to sound bad, but then we'll make it sound good. So now I can go into my track mix, turn this entire track all the way down, because we don't need to hear it. We just need the Ducker to hear it. And if we don't mute it, the Ducker will hear it. So then, still in track mix, let's go to this THX sample track, pop open dynamics, which I already had open, activate the Ducker, set my threshold properly. Too much? No. I like intense sidechain. Makes everything feel super energetic. That's important to me. So let's keep adding effects here. A nice reverb would help bring this to life a little bit. And I'm putting this before the sidechain. I put the sidechain at the very end preemptively because I figured I was going to do this. So here we go. Let's just crank up the room size, crank up the time a bit, crank down the mix a bit. Is that helping us? And I'm sure I'll do some EQ on this, but I'll leave that alone for now. We'll come back to that. So let's keep building on the drums. What I want to do is have this like switch from a vaporwave thing to a vapor trap thing midway through. I think that'd be sick. So let me adjust this hi-hat. And I've got this one set aside for some like extra hi-hat rolls, which I'll get to in a second. Oh, you know what I could do? I could have the hi-hat rolls alternate for when the pitch bend isn't present. Let's try that. And then life pro tip, the note repeat quantization also affects the rest of your quantization, so make sure to change it back or else your stuff isn't going to quantize the way you expect it to. Or at least it probably won't, which is very silly. Akai, I love you, but that's very silly. So I still don't have the drum chunk that I'm looking for, so I think we need some more intense EQ and some other processing, potentially. I like the way the compressor is acting, though, but I think my hi-hats are all too loud. That works. You know what this shaker needs? This bit, because it's like fighting with the hi-hat. For one thing, it just needs some pitch changing, so these aren't occupying like the exact same frequency spectrum. And then it needs some stereo width, so they're kind of occupying different space in the stereo image. Let's go into modulation, bust out the multi-chorus. There we go. And I think this could go with a reverb of some sort. Let's do the spring reverb. And now what I want to do is duplicate this sequence. We'll just call this sequence 2. This is going to be our switch up. So we're going to select all of these kicks, equip transpose, and then put them on a different track. So I want to put them here. I think these snares can go on this clap instead. So that's going to need some work. I'm going to layer this with an 808 eventually, so I think that's got too much tail. Some decimator. Okay, that's working for me. So then, let's bring in an 808, shall we? And once again, in the name of shameless self-promotion, gonna grab one of my own 808s here. Also, in my $5 sample pack, that helps keep both my channels going. So if you wouldn't mind picking that up, I do really appreciate it. So here's what I want to do. I want to set this to one shot. I want to set the polyphony to mono. And then I want to cut off this transient because the other kick is going to be handling most of the transients. So this needs a bit more processing to fit with the mix here. So let's just right away do some lo-fi. And I think we need to add a few more kicks before I do anything else. Let's do the same for the sidechain. Now we record the 808. So now to make that work, I feel like we need to cut some lows. Kind of makes it float over the top. I think this 808 could use some shaping as well. It's just a bit much. So what if we add another sound? Kind of double that up a bit. That way it can go in the more vaporwavy section as well. So I'm going to grab a bass sound. Yeah, this deep one is what I want. And I'm going to actually have it do the exact same pattern. So let's make this one shot. And it rings out for a nice long time, which is always good. So we're basically just imitating what that bass is doing, but with none of the crazy jumping around or rhythms. We want this one to be more in the background. And right now that is not at all the case. So let's set about changing that. First of all, we're going to sidechain this thing to hell and back. Crank the threshold down. That helps fill it out really nicely, and I'm not even done yet. Let's figure out how heavy of a distortion we can get away with. Okay, that I do not hate. So what about a filter envelope? That might be kind of neat. Cool, so that's working for me. So let's hear how this is going to sound. Yeah, that's going to work. Okay, so I think I've got most of what I need at the very least. I'm going to take this into my DAW, do a bunch of processing, and you can hear the final result right now. And that is it. So thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see some more beat making chaos, you can click or tap up over here, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching.